Years ago, a madman escaped from a mental hospital. It was the night before Halloween, and 3 teenage girls were walking home from Haddonfield High. They had sightings of a ghost-like figure creeping right through our town. A man in a white mask. Or was it more than a man? He was watching them. Before the night was over, 3 people would be murdered. And in the house next door, there was a babysitter and a young boy and a young girl. And they were brutally attacked by this stalker who had a power beyond any mortal man. My name is Tommy Doyle. And I was that young boy. So please, join me in commemorating the victims and the survivors of Michael Myers.
Oh, happy Halloween, +1 popheads. Welcome to issue 189 of the TomCast POPCast. Coming to you from, not from Haddonfield, Indiana, because fuck that place. My name is Tom. Thank you so much for checking out this small, independent pop culture podcast with hopefully some high quality to it. We'll see based on how this episode goes. My goodness. Make sure you're following us on social media. We are at TomCast POPCast on Twitter and Instagram, because yeah, that's what you have to do these days. Please feel free to email the show, tomcastpopcast@gmail.com. Make sure you're liking, subscribing, and sharing the show with all your friends, families, loved ones, the ghosts and ghouls and goblins that live in your life. And hey, if you have the time, 5-star reviews. One of the best ways to support a show and help us spread the word about what we're doing over here and to fight against the corruption, the terror, the tyranny of the Haddonfield Boogeyman, a.k.a. the algorithm. And yeah, the 5-star reviews go a long way to helping us do just that. So thank you in advance. Today's show, again, it's Halloween +1. Originally not scheduled to do this particular episode, but I couldn't resist. I have so many feelings and so many thoughts and so many just words that I want to expel from my body about today's movie. And listen, it's gonna be a bumpy ride. I'm not gonna lie. You know, we really advocate for being positive on the podcast. We really don't like getting shitty and getting negative about things, and we are reluctant. At least I am. Sometimes my guests are way more forthright with harsher feelings than I am. But I don't like to use the word hate on the podcast to describe, you know, a fictional account of somebody who's made up, and you know, so it's a strong word. But I really don't like a lot of the things going on in our movie today. And we are going to be, of course, I mean, you saw the title, you saw it when we hit the podcast feed. We are, of course, talking about 2021's Halloween Kills, the sequel to David Gordon Green's 2018 Halloween, a sort of soft reboot of the franchise, of the Michael Myers series, that did a lot of things. I think they did a lot of things pretty darn well in that 2018 version. Sort of simplified some things, stripped out some things that, you know, maybe I didn't need to see disappear, but they had a story to tell, and I was willing to go with them on the ride. And what we got was a very solid, a very entertaining new take on Michael Myers, his relationship with Laurie Strode, and we'll talk about that more in detail on the other side of the bump. So I was, but I wanted to give you that information because I was really excited to see this movie, and then I saw this movie, and wow, did my enthusiasm fizzle? And it fizzled pretty darn quickly. Again, for reasons that we will talk about on the other side. So yeah, get ready for this one because this is not going to be our normal show by any means because it is um, very critical, very hypercritical of this movie in particular. I feel a certain affinity for the Halloween franchise. I feel a certain affinity for the horror genre, and this movie, it listen. I appreciate when you swing big, but swinging big and missing big, woof. Those are two things that need to be talked about, and we will talk about the big swings and the big, huge misses with this movie because there are many. And yeah, it's the Halloween Kills is the middle chapter in a proposed trilogy. They are going to be doing the third part to finish this thing off. And sometimes sometimes that middle chapter is the one that lacks. Though The Empire Strikes Back would be one to say, I don't think so, buddy. But in this case, this one definitely lacks. And it again, I appreciate a big swing. I appreciate several of the big swings they tried to do in this movie. But oof, man, I mean, they swung themselves right out of their shoes in this one. My goodness gracious. So yeah, we are going to talk about that on the other side of the bump in just a moment. We're going to get into the positives, of which there are some, especially depending on what kind of horror movie fan you are. But we're also going to talk about the negatives, and we're going to try and be as honest and I'm going to try and give as much the reasoning for why I think these things are huge, huge misses. I don't want to just throw out blanket statements. I want to support my arguments here. And you agree or you disagree. Hopefully, we have a civil discourse about it and be like, Tom, you're wrong. Tom, you're right. Blah, blah, blah. It's A-okay. It's all good to have discourse as long as it's civil discourse. So let's talk about this stuff. I do want to give a special note before we get into the movie that this is going to be a solo show. Unfortunately, I did have a nice little panel lined up for this episode, and my schedule changed very suddenly, very last minute. And initially, I had hoped to maybe reschedule these guests and do it then, but they're going to come back on and do another show with us very in the very very near future. So this will be a solo show, not a solo stove because not a sponsor, but a solo show. Also, not a Han Solo show because Star Wars doesn't give us any money either. So me by myself talking about my thoughts, my feelings, my hurt feelings about this movie, what it lacked, what it doesn't seem to. Well, I was going to say what it doesn't understand about Michael Myers, but I think it wants to understand Michael Myers a little too well. So yeah, get ready for this one. Let me go ahead and give some of the particulars for this feature out right now. There's some of the details I want to get into before we kind of talk about the movie. This movie, much like the 2018 one, directed by David Gordon Green, written by David Gordon Green, Danny McBride, and Scott Teems. Scott Teems, I think, is a new addition. He wasn't on the original 2018 David Gordon Green picture. Produced once again by Malika Akkad, Jason Blum of Blumhouse, and Bill Block. The movie's doing well financially in the box office. I think right now, up to this point, it's made $73.1 million. It's doing quite nicely, but from a critical standpoint, it's not doing well. From an audience standpoint, it's not doing well. And, we should share that information with you too. On Rotten Tomatoes, it is currently generating an audience score of 67%. Not great. That's a D. That's a D. The critic score on the Tomato Reader, ooh, baby, that is a 39%. That is pretty darn far from fresh. Far from fresh as you can get. My goodness. And then over on IMDb, if you're into their rating system, they have it at a 5.8, which is still not great because that's not even it's a little more than halfway to 10. Woof, 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 woof. So, I guess at this point, the only concern I have about doing this podcast is it feels like it's piling on at this point. But you kind people who take the time to download, listen. This is what I'm here for, right? Like, I'm going to help you make a decision. I'm going to give you as much information about this movie as I can, and you will make the decision to see it or not to see it, or to watch it and confirm me, or to debunk me and my thoughts. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm excited to do it, though. It's going to be a fun one because, again, I love the Halloween franchise. I love Michael Myers. The original 78 movie is almost a perfect horror film. It's just a really great time. And I'm sure we'll talk about John Carpenter and what they had in the 78 film and what's so different about this one. And we'll get into all that right now. So let's go ahead and play another amazing clip from this movie. I'll see you on the other side of the bump, and we're going to break it down. So you know what that means you got to do. It's that time. You sit down, you buckle up, you hold on to your butts, you buckle up again, put on those Shatner masks. Let's go.
Listen, folks, please. The boogeyman is at large. He's got no choice but to emerge. He is an apex predator. When he surfaces, there will be no pause. There will be no empathy. This ends when Michael is dead. Michael Myers will be executed tonight, and it will not go without witness. We need all of you. Evil dies tonight.
So I have played for you 2 lines from this film that feature my new Halloween Kills themed drinking game, which is every time you hear a character utter the words 40 years ago or Evil Dies Tonight, you are going to get shit-faced because god damn do they repeat these lines a lot in this fucking movie. Holy balls. Evil Dies Tonight. No, it sure as fuck doesn't, and Evil kicks a lot of ass on its way to not dying tonight. Also, this is a nit, I suppose, but David Gordon Green's 2018 Halloween is again, a reboot of the franchise, a direct sequel to the original 1978 Halloween, therefore taking out Halloween 2 from continuity. The original Halloween 2, I guess, at this point. Except this movie heavily steals from that film, including the tagline, Evil Dies Tonight. So, what are we doing here? Holy smokes. So much stuff in this movie is actually in Halloween 2 from 1981, directed by the great John Carpenter. So it seems a little ridiculous that we're taking also that piece of the cinema away from Michael Myers. And that seems to be because they want to retcon another story into this film, where the Officer Hawkins, who we met in the 2018, played by Will Patton, has this immeasurable guilt because he stopped Dr. Loomis from executing Michael Myers, after the events of the first film. And we see that depicted. It's talked about in the 2018 movie. It's actually shown in flashbacks in this film. But that's just the beginning of this whole convoluted ball of shit that they have smashed together in an effort to make this new film. We have, again, we're lifting from a movie that we removed out of continuity with Halloween 2. There's the retconning of Officer Hawkins' story, who, by the way, Hawkins did not die, like we all suspected he did in 2018's Halloween, even though it looked like he was bleeding out massively. So you're retconning a past event into that. You're shoehorning another character into Laurie Strode's original Night of Trauma, and these are just some of the things I'm bumping up against. This is just, and we're just talking about the drinking game I made up, and why I'm so irritated by some of this stuff. We haven't even talked about the particulars of the film. And again, parsing this out is going to be a little difficult. I'm going to try and stay as much in the 2018 and the 2021 Halloween movies as I can, with older Laurie Strode, older Michael Myers, and we'll try to have a more rational discussion. I feel like if I try to cut back and forth too much between the original Carpenter from 78 and even Carpenter's sequel from 81, it might get a little jumbled in here as well, and we'll have a bigger mess of a podcast and they have a mess of a movie on their hands, and that's not what we want to do. We want to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of this movie. I want to reiterate that I really enjoyed David Gordon Green's 2018 Halloween. I thought it was a nice reboot / sequel. I didn't understand why they were taking Halloween 2 out of continuity, but that was the story they chose to tell. They emphasize being a survivor's traumas, the PTSD that Laurie Strode has been through after her attack from Michael Myers. Not only Laurie's trauma, but Laurie's generational trauma, the effect that her trauma has had on her daughter and on her granddaughter, and how that has shaped and driven their relationships with each other. So it's a very interesting take. It's a very interesting way to inject some reality into a horror film. And it's handled, I think it's handled very nicely in the 2018 film. I know some people who thought it was a tad heavy-handed. And that's okay too. That's well within your rights to believe that, and that's okay. For me, it worked out okay because the story was smaller. It was a more intimate story. It was about the Strode family, the women of the Strode family in particular, and I like that emphasis of women as survivors of trauma, of women of survivors of attacking, and Lori as the sort of woman who comes face to face with her attacker and confronts him directly. In this case, the attacker is a homicidal maniac named Michael Myers who killed your friends 40 years ago, and you have been traumatized ever since. It worked. You can also talk about it gets a little Home Alone-y when Laurie, her house is basically being constructed as a giant death trap for when Michael Myers were to come back for her as the sole survivor of his rampage in 1978. Again, the Home Alone references are easy to make, but that's because the Home Alone is just in the zeitgeist and people just know it. It just is what it is. And we think at the end of that film that Michael Myers has met his maker. He is in Laurie's death trap, burning alive. But alas, that is not the case because this film, 2021, Halloween Kills, picks up mere moments after the end of that film with Laurie, her daughter, and her granddaughter being taken back into town by a pickup truck that picked them up at the end of the film. It's going to take them to the hospital, to the ER. Everyone has got some. Laurie in particular has some serious battle damage from her encounter with Michael Myers. Has to go to the hospital. As they're racing back into town, though, what do you hear? What do you see? The fire trucks racing out to put out the blaze at Laurie's cabin in the woods, and them screaming and shouting, "No, let it burn! Let him burn!" And it's very dramatic, and you understand their upsetness, but at the same time, I feel like you really have just sabotaged your 2018 movie by completely undoing it in a matter of moments. Every strength, every ounce of goodwill that you earned with that 2018 movie from the audience, from me in particular, because this is my podcast, you have now put a serious damage into it. You have just taken a baseball bat to the kneecap of your credibility that you built in 2018 with what you just undid in 5 seconds. I get the idea that we're going to pick up the story mere moments and like Laurie's death trap fails. Michael finds a way out. These firefighters are the vehicle by which it makes his escape and relaunches his reign of terror against the residents of Haddonfield. But again, you just took Halloween 2 out of continuity. Halloween 2 is the next night. It's picking up from the events of Laurie's initial attack in 78. So why did you take it out of continuity? You would have a better mirror to reflect on if you kept that in there. Oh, wait, we have to go back to Officer Hawkins and shoehorning his prior encounters with Michael Myers into this so that we have another character who has trauma and regret from their encounter with Michael Myers from 40 years ago. Boo. That's what I say to that. I say fucking boo, man. It stinks that they have felt the need to shoehorn a new piece of backstory, of information into the story that didn't need it. You could have embraced Halloween 2 as part of your legacy. You chose not to. Now you're sort of adapting on the fly and trying to change your story at the same time. And I don't care for it. Do not care for it. Another element of the film that we have to talk about too is the way this movie tries to expand its world, the way it tries to grow its world by taking the Michael Myers situation from 40 years ago. And now you are, the first clip we played at the beginning of the podcast, it's Anthony Michael Hall who's stepping into the role of Tommy Doyle, the small child who Laurie basically saves from Michael Myers. Laurie, Lindsay, and Tommy Doyle. They are the survivors of Michael's initial encounter, along with Nurse Chambers. But we're not going to talk about Nurse Chambers right now. And I didn't even talk about how they shoehorned another encounter with Michael Myers with another character from the 78 film. Lonnie, who is Tommy Doyle's bully, also has an encounter with Michael Myers in the new flashback in this film to make him more relevant to the plot. So the shoehorning of some of this stuff is annoying. I'm very familiar with retconning. If anyone not familiar with the term, is retroactive continuity, which is where you take your modern story and you invent elements and you place it back in the old story. It's very common in comic books and soap operas in particular. And this is not a soap opera. But this, using it in this way, in this format for this film, shows what they're trying to do. Like you'll see what they're trying to do. It's not subtle. There's nothing subtle in this movie. They are attempting to expand their world, expand Michael Myers' world, and the trauma, the pain he's inflicted for 40 years onto this entire town now. So they are trying to make it a bigger story than it needs to be, a bigger event that Michael is back, and people's reactions to it. You heard the other clip right between the segments of Tommy Doyle once again being the mob leader, trying to get the town riled up, introducing an element of mob mentality to this movie. Again, not something new to the Halloween franchise. This is in Halloween 4. The return of Michael Myers. It's all in there. This has all been done before. I would even argue that maybe even done better than what we saw today. But they're not trying to go for it in the sense of this is a horror movie and a horror mob mentality going back to the days of like the Frankenstein pictures. No. This is a bigger message that they're trying to send her. And that's the problem with this movie. It wants to send a message. It wants to comment on the real world. Our real world. Not the real world in which these characters inhabit. But no. It wants to comment on everything that's wrong with society. Everything that's wrong with our society. It wants to comment on mob mentality. It wants to comment on Black Lives Matter. It wants to comment on the Me Too movement. It wants to say something about all these things. And it's a horror movie. And don't misunderstand that comment, because many of the best horror films are a commentary on something in society. This movie's mistake is it's trying to comment on everything currently wrong in society. Again, a big swing. But watch the delivery. Watch the big whiff on all of this. The mob mentality stuff is comically bad. Comically bad. Tommy whips these people up into a frenzy. So much so that they pursue an innocent man and drive this other mental patient who escaped with Michael in the first film to jump out of a window. It's done comically bad. It is not well executed. It is not well done, and the comicness of it completely diminishes whatever message they're trying to say about mob mentality. And the mob mentality of this story does not go away. It plays into the third act in a huge way, and we're not even there yet. And I'm still tripping over myself a little bit because I can't believe there's just so much to talk about in this film that is so completely asinine and ridiculous. It's a very frustrating movie to watch. Even as someone who loves this franchise and wants this series to succeed more than anything, to come away from 2 viewings of it just frustrated and really bummed out was just so disappointed. So disappointed. I want to pause for a moment and offer some light. Potentially to some of you, depending on who you are in the audience and what kind of horror films that you're into. If you are into the kills, if you are into the blood, the gore, the viscera, this movie will probably deliver for you in many ways. Michael's rampage is pretty gruesome. The body count is high. The kills are, I don't know if inventive is the right word, but he uses a lot of different ways to kill a lot of different people. He stages many of the bodies, as he is known to do. Though they seem to lack... There's nothing fearful about the killings at this point. He's become... At this point in the movie, like Michael showing up is just sort of an inevitability. There's no more... Is he behind you? Is he going to blend out of the shadows? Those shots don't really exist in this film, not to the extent that they did in Carpenter's work or even the 2018 work, which tried to be more subtle. This movie is very much in your face. Michael's in your face. If he's not in the exact room, he's going to come out from behind you really quick, or he's going to jump at you from another room really quick. There's the subtlety in this one is misplaced, and that is sort of the biggest complaint I have about it. Is like there is no subtlety with this movie. There's no finesse. It is beat you over the head with whatever message each scene is trying to give us. We've lost focus on Jamie Lee and her survivor story her PTSD and her generational trauma with her daughter and her granddaughter, because they wanted to expand this world and they wanted to show they wanted to impart this sort of a larger scope to the trauma that Michael's inflicted on the town of Haddonfield as a whole. But it's completely underscored by what Tommy says at the beginning of his speech, that people don't even remember this. They don't even remember the Haddonfield boogeyman. They don't remember Michael Myers, and and him just getting them riled up is like it's ridiculous. I mean, like, these people, they're sheeple. They are actual sheeple. They're just like, yeah, whatever he said, fuck that guy, let's get him. Like, Jesus Christ, does anyone in this movie have a fucking brain? If anyone in the audience does, they know this is shit. And I guess that is, again, another piece of the frustration pie that I ate while watching this film. Again, a film, for the 100th time, a film I really wanted to like and really wanted it to be really good. And I just was vexed. Just vexed by what I was seeing. And one of the things that I'd like to talk about as well, we talked about the expanding scope, how this movie wants to have all this social commentary on so many different things. There, again, and the best horror movies do that. They comment on something in society. You know, most recent example I can think of is Get Out. Have you seen Get Out from Jordan Peele? Fantastic movie. Terrifying in so many ways because of the reality of it, the racism of which they are commenting on, and the way it's being showcased and displayed. But that movie's done with a nice touch. There's some finesse. There's some subtlety. Like, you kind of got to work to parse through what's going on, especially at the beginning. You're trying to figure it out. You're like, I think they're racist. Are they racist? But again, by the time you see what's happening, you figure it all out. But again, this movie is about as subtle as a goddamn chainsaw to the face. Nothing is held back in this. It is just over the head, beating you ridiculous until you are just worn out and done. Done. You just let it run over you. And because this movie wanted to do this commentary, because it wanted to comment on all these social issues, all these current events that are going on in the world, and again, horror movies can do that. They definitely can do that. But this movie makes the mistake of thinking that it is more than a horror movie. This movie thinks it's a prestige picture, that there's going to be some sort of parade of awards coming its way for its audacious take on mob mentality, for its audacious take on PTSD and survivors' traumas, and all the other things that it's attempting to comment on in this film. And it, again, big swing, big fucking miss. Like, fall out of the batter's box with your cleats over your face. Like, woof. Did you even see the pitch? I don't think so. But yeah, this movie wanted to be a prestige picture. They released this at the what was it, the Venice Film Festival? A very hoity-toity film festival for movies that think they're going to get Academy Awards or Golden Globes or any, all that shit. I'm not. This is. I don't want to use this term at all, but the movie's not self-aware enough to know what it is. It wants to be something that it's not, and it can't pull it off. It fails miserably at trying to pull it off. It is a complete, unmitigated, fucking disaster. And again, I appreciate a big swing, but man, I feel like they weren't even close. They were not even close on this. So awful in so many of his things. And then, again, for a movie that's trying to comment on so many social issues, again, we talk about, Black Lives Matter and Me Too and women first and all these positive things that deserve to be talked about and addressed in a well-written, thought-provoking social commentary. This movie kills the black couple. This movie kills the gay couple. So, like, what are we really doing here? like what is happening? The gay couple, who's on a completely side, is on like the C story of this film, which we have not even talked about the C story just yet, because my goodness gracious, that is one to like pull your eyebrows out over. The two black characters, the two African American characters who get roped into the mob mentality thing, dispatched by Michael in very gruesome ways, very gruesome deaths. Again, if you're into that part of the movie, you're going to enjoy the way they die. Spoilers. They fucking die. The mob fucking dies. Evil doesn't die tonight. It doesn't even fucking come close. Except for when it does, but we'll talk about that later too. Because, holy shit. That's another can of fucking worms. All right, I gotta take a breath. I'll be right back. Woo!
Do you have any idea whose house this was?
No.
You ever hear of Michael fucking Myers?
And do you know what happens to people who come into the Myers home without an invitation?
We're not even scared.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
He stabbed his sister in the tits.
Yuck.
Right upstairs.
Let's talk a little bit about our characters in this movie, and I specifically want to focus on Laurie Strode, her daughter Karen, and her daughter Allison, the three Strode women in this picture, and again, they're our main characters from 2018's reboot. They're generational trauma. Again, a storyline that I found very interesting, if not a little bit compelling, as a driving factor, as a driving force in that 2018 version. In this movie, again, the world has been expanded. We're doing new things with more characters. We're interacting with more of Haddonfield. We're going back to the other victims of Michael Myers. Like I said, Tommy Doyle, played by Anthony Michael Hall. We get Will Patton's backstory as Deputy Frank Hawkins and his encounter with Michael Myers. Unfortunately, because of these other things going on, this world expanding that they're attempting to do, the Strode women, get totally fucking sidelined in this movie. Again, Karen and Allison have much bigger parts than maybe you would have expected. But again, they're roped into these ridiculous B stories. They're roped into the mob mentality story. Karen is trying to de-escalate the mob that's chasing after the wrong person. And again, if you just have been told a story by a survivor like Tommy Doyle about his attacker, do you really think it's going to be a guy who could double for the fucking Penguin? Like Danny DeVito Penguin? No. Why aren't you looking for the guy who's like 6'8" and built like a brick shithouse? Like, what the fuck? So they're chasing this little penguin guy around, and Karen gets involved in trying to save him. It doesn't work out because mob mentality, mob rules all, and they're going to fucking drive this crazy person to do a crazy thing in his life by jumping out of a fucking window. So... Meanwhile, Karen's also trying to deal with her mom, who Jamie Lee, her mom Laurie, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, very upset that the firefighters went out there. Karen tries to shield Laurie from the news that Michael's still alive and is rampaging through Haddonfield once again. But eventually that all comes out as Tommy Doyle breaks into our hospital room. Great fucking security over this hospital, by the way. Just anyone can walk into any room in the world. So she gets all amped up. She's trying to get drugged up so she can go back out there and finish the fight. And, good commendations for her. Because, again, Laurie wants to fight. She wants to fight Michael. She wants to end all this stuff. I get it. I'm there for all of it. But, again, this character has been injured. Very badly injured in her last encounter with Michael. So she's in no physical condition to do that. So they keep her in a hospital bed for the majority of this film. We never get Laurie and Michael even looking at each other in this film. They are completely separated. They are completely removed from one another. And I'm going to put a pin in that right now because I do want to talk about Allison. Allison Strode. Well, her last name's not Strode because, again, she has a dad. But it's part of the Strode women, all right? She, again, roped into the mob mentality, trying to save people, trying to help people, trying to end the terror that is Michael Myers, going about it in all the wrong ways, getting her boyfriend killed, her boyfriend's father killed. Because, seriously, what do you think you guys are going to do against Michael Myers? This guy's bad news, right? Leave this to professionals. And again, another element to this story, this mob mentality story. I don't want to make a broad blanket statement about the people of Indiana. But I would imagine there's some hunting that goes on there in the wintertime, And maybe more than 2 people in this town would have a gun. As opposed to chasing Michael Myers down with a baseball bat. Just a thought. I'm curious. Again, I'm a Californian. What do I know? What do I know about Indiana? It just didn't make a lot of sense to me. But that focuses on another little bit of insanity in this film too. And we can't talk about that just yet. All right, so let's go back to Jamie Lee. Let's go back to her now being hospitalized with Deputy Frank Hawkins. And we sort of get this rekindling of a romance in the middle of this fucking movie that doesn't really need to be there. As Hawkins and Laurie attempt to out-guilt one another for not being able to kill Michael Myers. and for letting evil live for another day. And it's again, it's not good. It brings the movie to a screeching halt. It's interjected in the midst of these mob mentality scenes, and I don't really understand the purpose. Is it just, again, we're attempting to shoehorn Deputy Hawkins's mistake in allowing Michael to live on the original night of his attack against Laurie and the other babysitters. But what's the purpose again? I know there's a trilogy here, and obviously he's gonna have a role to play in it. As these again, our pool of survivors is drastically reduced by the end of this picture. But oh boy, I am loath to think how this will all end in the third movie, which is gonna be called Halloween Ends. But I doubt it will end for too long because there is always more money to be made. Always more money to be made. So yeah, Jamie Lee gets sidelined in this movie. The rest of the stars get sidelined. Karen takes a more active role by the third act because she needs to save Allison from Michael. And that goes horribly wrong too. And for reasons that I'm hesitant to even get into at this moment because I don't know how much I want to jump ahead to the end of the picture. Because talking about Michael in this way is very upsetting to me. Again, we sort of have illustrated, they went way out of their way to do this as a reboot and make it a direct sequel to the 78 film with their 2018 version. It's like, we're going to pick it up 40 years later. Halloween 2 didn't happen. Halloween 3 definitely didn't happen. Season of the Witch, Michael's not even in that one. Halloween 4, 5, and 6, Resurrection, all didn't happen. H2O didn't happen. None of them happened, all right? Yet we're mining very familiar territory with Michael, and even with the town of Haddonfield. Like I mentioned, I think it was in Halloween 4 when there's a mob that's going to go after Michael Myers, and it's a whole thing. And again, for that movie, it sort of works. But that movie's it's a very small movie. This movie's trying to be this big grandiose feature, trying to be this all-encompassing social commentary, and it doesn't have the gravitas to pull it off. It doesn't have the skill to pull it off. It doesn't have the story to pull it off. I know I'm not saying the actors couldn't have done a great job. I like this cast. I like Judy Greer as Karen. I like Andy Matichak as Allison. Even Anthony Michael Hall, despite how ridiculous his version of Tommy Doyle is, I blame the writers. I don't blame Anthony Michael Hall for that. He's just doing what he has to work with. And my goodness, what he has to work with is not great. Not great, Bob. Not great. But let's just go ahead and get into it, into my big gripe about what we're doing here in this movie, in this franchise, in this series. They make a concerted effort to de-emphasize Laurie Strode in Michael's killing spree. In this film, they shift the focus less on him trying to get to Laurie and finish what he started 40 years ago into simply, Michael wants to go home. And that's why he's doing what he's doing. He's on a murderous rampage to go home. Not to Haddonfield, to his actual fucking house. As we established with that previous sound clip, that is the home of Big John and Little John, our resident Haddonfield gay couple, who die an inglorious death at Michael's hands because they now occupy his house. They've done a cute little, renovation on it. Looks great. So many rooms, so many colors, so many fun things going on in that house. I have a nice charcuterie board going on for Halloween. It's fantastic fun. Nice record collection. They die a horrible death because they live in Michael's house and he's now back. And this dovetails into Hawkins' story too, about how Hawkins' partner grew up with Michael as a little kid. And they would go over to play and Michael would just be staring out the window, looking at nothing or looking at everything. And that's for us to decide. So this all coalesces into the mob mentality scene, particularly when Karen arrives to save Allison, who just watched her boyfriend and her boyfriend's dad be murdered very brutally by Michael. Her boyfriend pays a horrible price for messing with Michael Myers. Allison gets a couple stabs in. This is the first time we've seen Michael take some damage in this film. She gets Michael stabbed a couple times, not big deep cuts, but cuts nonetheless, like painful cuts that would, Michael's gonna be doing some bleeding at this point. Karen comes out, lures him away to save Allison, and this is where Karen, leads Michael Myers by taking his mask, knowing that he will follow. She leads him about a block away to where the mob is waiting. Tommy Doyle, the Tommy Doyle-led mob, is waiting. Now, this mob, by this point in the movie, after the little guy, the little penguin man, committed suicide, not as many numbers as there once were with the mob. You know, not as ramped up, but there's still some dedicated people to killing a dude out there in the world, and they're going to kill this dude named Michael Myers tonight, because evil dies tonight. I don't know if we've emphasized that enough. Evil dies tonight. Well, listen, let's back it up for a minute too, all right? Because there's a moment when Karen is attempting to save Allison. Again, Allison has stabbed Michael a couple times. He's taken some damage. Karen gets the drop on Michael with, I believe it's a golf club. No, it's a pitchfork. And then maybe a golf club. I don't know. She gets some shots on him, and there's a pitchfork, and then some hitties, and Michael goes down against the stairwell, where Karen then curb stomps him. Should be the end of the movie, right? Right. Not so fast, my friends. Michael shakes that shit off. Michael gets up from what should be a very broken neck. So, as an audience, we're left to wonder, well, what the fuck is happening now? Because for 40 years, the other 40 years, our 40 years, not the 40 years ago, the boogeyman of Haddonfield struck. Not that 40 years. No. But for 40 years, we have been told that Michael Myers is a man. He is evil incarnate, but he is a man. He is killable. He is an insatiable, bloodthirsty killer, but he is still a man. Then, as Karen is leading Michael away after she yanks his mask off, and we still don't see Michael's face, that will never be revealed, and I'm fine with that. I have no big issue with that whatsoever. That's part of the brand. That's all good. But as we are leading him away to the mob, to Tommy Doyle's mob that's waiting to kill him, we cut back. We're cutting back and forth now. We're doing some quick cuts back to Deputy Hawkins, back to Laurie at the hospital, and they're talking about Michael and what his real curse is, and you know, how he's getting more powerful with every person that he kills, and how he is transcending. The fuck you say? The fuck you say? And this is what we witness as this mob begins to beat down and theoretically kill Michael Myers. He is shot, he is stabbed, he is beaten over and over again. And then when they think they have finally killed him, he gets up and kills them all. Now, remember, this is only a block away from where Karen found her daughter at Michael Myers' residence. So Karen goes back to check on Allison. Meanwhile, all this is going on a block away. And so when Michael's getting the drop on these people and they're screaming bloody murder, Karen has no idea that Michael may have just survived whatever encounter he's in. Because, again, we get the call back to Michael looking out the window of his childhood room, of his sister's childhood room, before he killed her. And so, for whatever the fuck reason, Karen decides it's time to go up into that room, and she's going to gaze out that window and see if she could see what Michael was seeing. Only to find Michael Myers come out of the fucking shadows and chop her fucking head off. Well, maybe not her head, chopping off her head, but kills her dead, real dead. And that is the end of this movie. And we are left with many a question. Mostly, the fuck you say? Because, listen, let's back it up. Let's go into these movies that they threw away with the old continuity, with the old canon. Michael Myers, 4, 5, and 6. Return, Curse of, Origin of Michael Myers. These movies attempted to explain Michael Myers as a supernatural being, as a being with powers beyond the mortal world. And they were laughed out of continuity, basically. When H2O came back in 98? They ignored all that shit, too, because they decided, no. Michael's a man. He's the shape. He is evil in human form. He is evil in flesh. That's what Michael Myers is, but he's still flesh. He's still a man. Now we've gone back to the shit they threw out 20 years before this. So I don't understand what the fuck they are trying to say. If Michael is transcending, if Michael is now becoming more than a man, and again, this is what Tommy hints at in his opening speech, like 15 minutes into this picture, that he had powers beyond a mortal man, even back in 78. Again, powers beyond a mortal man, but he was happy to be in a mental institution for 40 fucking years. Anyways, So where does that leave us moving forward? I don't know. Because how do you just kill someone who's just transcended and is no longer killable, in a sense? We are left to wonder many of these things. We are left to ponder many of these issues because the movie will jump in time. Again, this movie came out in 2021, but it is a sequel. It is the same day of the events of the 2018 movie. So this movie out now is set in 2018 still. It's going to go ahead in time to, I think, 2024 is the plan. Something like that. So there's going to be a lull, time for these characters to process their new grief, their new traumas, as Michael has basically just killed half the town in one night. So you've given yourself the credibility that you wanted to have in the start of this movie by the end of this movie, which makes it feel like a waste of fucking time. Because now Haddonfield has experienced a trauma, a very recent fucking trauma. So now, in the next movie, if you wanted to bring in mob mentality, I would buy it a lot more readily than I do this one that's 40 years after the fact, driven and spiked by one or two survivors from 40 years ago. Now you have the makings of a real mob mentality, as the survivors of this situation are real. They are still in the now, and in 4 or 5 years, whatever timeline they jump into, are still going to be processing that grief and that trauma. Now your mob makes sense in the next movie, not in this one. Misplaced, mishandled, swing, and a miss. Big whiff. Big fucking whiff. And again, I don't know where we're going to go from here. Obviously, Frank Hawkins, obviously, Laurie Strode, and Allison will have a role to play in this movie. But a lot of fucking people died in this one. So that's kind of your cast right there. And I don't know what else I want to say about this. There's definitely more to get into. Michael's transcendence really bothers me, though. We spent so much time hitting the reset button in the 2018 Halloween of sort of re-simplifying Michael, re-simplifying the story, making it a smaller, a more intimate story, focusing on Laurie, focusing on Michael. And then in this movie, we shift away from all of it. And it's never been about Laurie, apparently. It was always about Michael going home. Well, what the fuck did I watch in 2018 when he drove out to the fucking woods to kill her? Like, what are we doing here? It feels like we're making shit up on the spot because Halloween in 2018 was a successful movie, and they're like, you know what? We're gonna make more of those. So you guys want to do that trilogy after all? And now they're having to amend things. They're having to go back and fix things again. They're retroactively continuing their own movie, their own scripts as they're going, because the first time they did this, it made more money and made more cash, and that bums me out. That bums me out. I would have rather you write like you're gonna write a trilogy, but you don't pull up the stops. But the seeds are there. You plant your story, build your story the way you need to. Don't force it in. Don't ram it in. That's what this episode feels like. Again, this is the middle chapter of a trilogy, and it feels like they're shoehorning and ramming everything into this one because they need it for the next one. Meanwhile, if you'd played your cards better, if you'd written a better story, if you'd written a better script, a tighter script that plotted these things out ahead of time, you'd be good to go right now. We wouldn't have had to waste this time with this insanity that was thrown at us. That was so many different things, so many different themes, so many different topics. You could have gone for the jugular in a far more effective way with a leaner, meaner movie, and one that hits more potently, it hits more effectively. This is just glancing blows because you're just scraping at things. You're swinging at so many different targets here, and you're not really hitting any of them. This movie could hit water if it fell to a fucking boat. I mean, that's how big the misses are in this. It's really just tragic. I think David Gordon Green is a good filmmaker. This movie does his reputation a huge disservice, though. He gets style points. Again, the kills are high. The blood is high. If you like the blood, that's great. But maybe take a moment to pause and reconsider. In 1978, that movie has very little blood in it, almost none, basically none. And it's a great example of what a good horror movie can and should be. So is blood the answer? I don't think so, personally, but that's up to each individual to decide. I feel like there is a note that I am missing, that I am forgetting to talk about. And again, so much stuff with Laurie that is a bummer in this movie. Karen's effort to hide everything from her reaction to things, her just being sidelined throughout this film. It's a huge bummer. Jamie Lee's a great a great performer, a great actor, and I would have liked to see her have more to do in this movie than just lay in the bed and like reconnect with a prior love interest. It really just bummed me out quite a bit, and I wish we had been able to do more with her in this one. Allison has some nice moments. There's some good parts. There are some interesting parts of this movie. I like the bit that follows up with those kids who were trick or treating the gay couple, the big John and Little John. I like them at the park when Michael's fucking around with them, and then Lindsay's the one who shows up and is like, "You got to get the fuck out of here." Like there are moments in this movie where you're like, "Okay, all right, I'm with you again. I'm kind of back in." Can we get more consistent with our theme, with our direction, with our narrative? And the answer is unfortunately no. The narrative's all over the place. The themes are all over the place. We go from one topic to the other. The mob mentality stuff is comical. Comical. And this is not a movie you should be laughing at. Again, for the amount of seriousness, for the heavy tone in which it is trying to present itself, you shouldn't be laughing at some of this shit. But again, this mob is chasing a guy who's like Danny DeVito's stunt double from Batman Returns. It's ridiculous. It's fucking ridiculous. It's fucking ridiculous. It's fucking ludicrous. It is something else. At this point, I'm almost daring you to watch it just to see if you feel the same way or if I'm way the fuck off base and I'm being way too hypercritical. Which, again, I don't think I have of myself as a hypercritical person. I am a very low bar when it comes to most things. I am happy to be mindlessly entertained. This movie just bummed me out, man. All you need to, even if your narrative is ridiculous and stupid and asinine, like if you're consistent, I'm okay with it. But this movie wanted to be so much more grandiose, so much more than a horror film, and it's a terrible misstep. Maybe Halloween Ends redeems it in the third installment. I don't know. We're going to pause again. I'll come back with my final thoughts and then we're going to wrap it up. Oh boy! 40 years ago! Evil dies tonight. Drink!
Is that Dennis's mask? Run! Go home now! Before he kills us all, get out of here! Run! Do not turn around! Keep going home!
Okay, I'm back. I'm calmer now. But I would like to refocus, recrystallize what I was trying to say about the mob mentality in this film. Because, again, very clumsily executed in this film, they try to incite this mob mentality when Tommy Doyle's at the hospital scene. And this is supposed to be the moment where this mob sort of crystallizes, right? Because we're seeing parents find their dead son, or people are realizing that their neighbors have been murdered by Michael. In the events from the first movie, they're not even finding the bodies from the new one just yet. So, again, it's sort of a forced reaction. But what's complicating this and what actually is making this scene even stupider and taking away from what they're trying to do in this movie is that as Tommy Doyle is what some might call inciting a riot, the police are just standing there watching him do it. They just stand there, let him do it, let him form his vigilante mob squads, and go about his business as he sees fit. The police easily could have squashed this, again, because I do believe inciting a riot is a crime that you can be arrested for. Just a thought. You'll recognize the police officer from the 2018 who just stands there and lets him do this and lets this scene get completely out of hand. The police actions in this movie are comical. Their lack of action, their lack of doing anything, they are completely useless in this film. And I think that, again, I think that is supposed to be a part of the statement that they're trying to make. One of the many messages that they are trying to tell us in this movie is that the police are useless and the police are good for nothing. So in this movie, they are completely neutered. They are completely hampered. And again, let's take that message even further, because we talked about how this movie's commenting on way too many social issues. In the flashbacks with Deputy Hawkins, we are seeing the police prepared to execute an unarmed man. And, again, the moral question of do you have a chance to kill evil, do you do it? But let's look at the optics of that scenario. We are commenting in the present time of this story. They are commenting on the social issues. They are very ham-fistedly making reference to Black Lives Matter and other very relevant social issues that are occurring in our world. And then we flash back to the police getting ready to execute a man unarmed in the back of the head. The movie's clumsy, and I feel like clumsy is the most polite way I can say it. It's silly. The stuff we're supposed to be taking so seriously, and that we're supposed to be like shook by, and the wokeness of the movie is supposed to resonate with us, is comical. It's comical at best, and those are not things you should be laughing at. You really, really shouldn't. Even it's again, it's sort of a lackadaisical effort to comment on mental health awareness and those things. Again, this movie, if there's a topic in the world that is in current conversations, mental health, that's a big topic of conversation. This movie has a comment for it. Black Lives Matter has a comment for it. Police brutality has a comment for it. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's again, I can appreciate a big swing, but boy, oh boy, they don't even foul tip the ball. It's just they just fall over their face trying to hit this ball that they can't even see. I don't think their eyes are open. It's just whoa, it's so bad. And there is talk that in the third one, in Halloween Ends, that again, as we said, it's going to jump in time. It's going to jump several years from now, so that those traumas that are inflicted in this movie are still fresh, and more people are scarred, and that town trauma that they're trying to bring in this movie has been saturating for a longer period of time. How they're going to play that out, we don't know yet, but they're already talking about how they'd like to sort of incorporate the pandemic into that movie, into that world, and I'm just sort of scratching my head at what are we doing here? What are we trying to do here? It's Michael Myers. It's Halloween. It's a fairly simple story, and we are overly complicating this thing. And I really wish, again, for all the goodwill they earned with the 2018, sort of soft reboot of the franchise, they just pissed it all away with this one, and I'm very concerned how they're going to wrap this trilogy up. Again, maybe this is just the weak middle chapter, and they come out strong, and they hit on more they hit more than they miss. But I don't know. I am extremely nervous, and I've only really scratched the surface of many of the things in this movie that bothered me. Again, I want to iterate, not having Jamie Lee, not Laurie Strode, have a confrontation with Michael, I think, is weak sauce. Making Karen's death, it's ridiculous. Sure, if you want to kill that character, but having her, again, be a block away from where Michael Myers has committed a massacre and not hear a single noise, and then be somehow lured by the idea of going up and staring out his sister's bedroom window to gaze into the void, is again comical. And then Michael just showing up. The kind of the creepiest moment of the movie is the only time he kind of bleeds out of the shadows like he's known for doing, is to kill Karen. It's ham-fisted, it's clumsy, it's sloppy. It could all be done so much better. And I think there's very talented people involved in these movies, in making these movies. I don't know. Again, I appreciate a big swing. This doesn't work on many levels. If you like the kills, if you like the blood and the gore, this movie's going to check those boxes for you. But the plot needs work. The story needs work. You had a much more intimate story in 2018. You got too big for your britches in this one. Do you recenter? Do you refocus your story in the next one? And I guess we're gonna have to wait and see. I think the plan is for that to start production fairly soon, and then probably be out in a year or so. So I guess we're gonna find out soon. But who knows? Who knows? Yeah, I think again, I think I've said all I'm gonna say about the film. It's not great. And I guess I should also disclose fully that I did watch the movie on Peacock. I watched it at home, and I've watched it twice. The first time around was a much more upsetting watch because I really was unhappy with what I saw. I went back to it the second time a day or two later, with more of a, all right, I know what's happening here. I know what to expect. I can really start to discern what I like and what I don't about this film, and allow me to have a more honest conversation with all of you, which is what I try to do on this podcast ever since ever since I tried to spin something in a bad way on like the fourth episode of the show. I was like, the movie's not good. I don't know why I tried to convince people that it was. So this podcast learns from its mistakes, and now we're just trying to be honest with everybody. All right, but yeah, we're about at that time. Like I said, I don't think I have too much more to say about it. I'm just disappointed. I'm just hugely disappointed because I am a very big fan of this franchise, and I like to see how the Halloween movies do well. And I was interested in the story, and now I'm just like, oof, I don't know. I know me, I'm a completionist. I will watch the third part when it comes out, but the bar will be so much lower. Again, I have to go back one more time. I'm so sorry. I am going to wrap it up. The incredulity of it all. This mob scene where we're watching Michael get shot and beaten, and Karen stabs him very deeply, very badly, sort of at the base of his neck almost. Again, and she's already curb stomped him, so he should be dead 10 times over. Oof. That's where we're going to end that's what we're going to end it with. We're going to end it with Jamie Lee's little conversation with Hawkins as the mob beatdown is happening, and we are bearing witness to Michael's, what they are calling his transcendence. Let's go ahead and check that out.
I always thought Michael Myers was flesh and blood, just like you and me. But a mortal man could not have survived what he's lived through. The more he kills, the more he transcends into something else impossible to defeat. Fear. People are afraid. That is the true curse of Michael.
Hey, all right, let's do it. I promise I'm not going to talk any more about that movie. Thank you all so much for listening to my scathing diatribe about this film. Hope I didn't trip over myself too many times. Hope you get my points. But by all means, watch the movie. Hit me up. Let me know if you agree, disagree, what you liked about the film, what you didn't, what problems you bumped up against. By all means, let me know. You know where to find me on social media at TomCast POPCast on Twitter and Instagram. Please email the show, tomcastpopcast@gmail.com. Another reminder to please make sure you're liking, subscribing, and sharing the show with all the ghosts and goblins and ghouls in your family. And we are on all of your favorite platforms, so please, by all means, find us wherever you normally look for your favorite podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, by the way, 5-star reviews, so helpful. And I think I deserve one for today's episode, with just me full of piss and vinegar and vindictive anger. Just you don't get me like this too often. And but Halloween Kills really brought out something special in me, and I hope you all enjoyed getting to hear it. I want to thank the official members of Pophead Nation, because without them, of course, this show does not go on. They are the most important people on the planet, so I thank them so much. If you wanted to join the nation, you would gain access to bonus content. You can do that at patreon.com/TomCast POPCast. Again, bonus content. So juicy. Thank you to our current Patreons, the Aspen Hill Chody, the Batman of Bay Park, Jeff Nail. Actually, the Batman of Bayho. I gotta remember that. He's also the co-host of The Ringing Ear, a great music podcast. Please check them out. Thanks to Evil Circle, the evilest of all circles. The Squidmaster General, Mr. Brian Broussard, the New Jersey Devil, Mark Wegemer, our very own Joker and Harley Quinn, Brian and Krista of Pariah Brewing Company, right here in San Diego. And, of course, the Beer Hop Brigadier General, Jesus Beer Hops. Can't forget him. And, of course, still our newest member, the Silent Assassin, he who shall not be named. And the name is definitely not Michael Myers, for sure. All right, we're going to be back very soon. We got some upcoming shows, hopefully planned. We'll see if they actually get filmed or recorded and released on time or not. The schedule's a little muddled at the moment, but we're doing our best. We're trying to stay on target. And we'll hopefully see you guys very, very soon. Well, see is, you know what I mean. Let's get out of here. Ciao, babes.
So the Tribe drops its third straight on this trip, 6-1 to the Rangers. For the Indians, one run on, one hit. That's all we got. One goddamn hit.
You can't say goddamn on the air.
Don't worry, nobody's listening anyway.
Great story. Compelling and rich.
We're not gonna be fucking sunk this year! We're the Stanley Cup champions! Yeah!